Hi, I'm Becca Otis from Five Lines Pottery in Monroe, Washington.
And I'm Ryan Durbin from RD Ceramics, located in Southgate, Kentucky.
And welcome to Wheel Talk.
Hey guys, we've loved answering all of your questions so far. If you'd like to hear your question on the podcast, please send them to us on Instagram at wheeltalkpodcast or by email to wheeltalkpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks.
I don't know, we'll see. Hi, Ryan.
Or the delay. Hi, Becca.
We're live. Oh.
Live.
We're live. I just pushed my microphone towards me a little bit closer. How are you doing, Ryan?
Good.
Good.
Not too bad. Oh, this weekend was like, we had so there was I'm kind of in like quarantine, I guess. There's a friend of ours that we hung out with as of 10 days ago now that was COVID positive. So they first like told Rachel, because it was a coworker of hers that we hung out with for her birthday. And then the two other people that we hung out with that night that were in our group are COVID positive as well.
What?
So Rachel and I have no symptoms. The two that got it first were showing more symptoms. So, she started showing symptoms, the first person.
Are they okay?
Yeah, I think they're fine. They're just kind of going through the quarantine and getting tested and all that sort of thing. They're all like about our age-ish. I mean, I think the oldest is probably like 35 maybe.
Yeah.
So we're kind of figuring that out. Yeah, so we just got tested yesterday. We'll find out the results in a couple days.
Gotta be careful.
So I'm actually would be in class at Baker Hunt right now.
Yeah.
And I'm at home right now. So we're figuring it out.
Yeah.
It was one of those that like Rachel found out from her, and they were doing the texting and like, hey, this person was with us. They were showing symptoms on this day, and then like backtracking and trying to trace like who we came into contact with. And we went to a wedding the day after we hung out with them.
Oh my God.
So we like texted those friends that we were at the wedding with, like at their table and stuff like that. So they got a heads up. And then, normally I would have my assistant come on Monday, and I was like, hey, just so you know, like this, and we'll skip this week so you don't have to come this week. And just a heads up. So like, I didn't hear anything back from any of those people that we contacted that said, hey, I'm showing symptoms or something that would kind of lead us to believe that we may be the contact point between the two groups. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's scary. That's weird.
Yeah, so luckily we don't have any big obligations going on. And then you're supposed to be here next week.
Yeah, well, if you got COVID,
as
I ain't
of when
coming.
we record this. So so we'll find out on Wednesday, and then our 14-day isolation or quarantine or whatever, it was saying since you last contacted the person that was infected. So
Okay.
I think I'm at day 10 right now. So
if
the end of this week would be 14 days, given that I'm negative.
If you do have it, I'll just go to Rebecca's and help her bang out some pots.
There you go.
And wear my mask the whole time.
Nice.
It's been stressful at the shop because I just started getting a little bit more traffic in the shop just from like
fall weather and stuff like that.
Yeah, fall weather and painting and all those things. And I have anxiety, so that's great. And then, I've been wearing my mask, but of course there's slip-ups and like, people around here aren't very careful, and probably including myself. I try to be, but, I'm like, oh God, I hope I don't give it to anybody. And I try to stay away from people. I'm like on the other side of the room and keep my mask on. But it's just like, it's kind of stressful. Like, with your situation, pretty much everyone you come into contact with. And that's good because then you can talk to the people. And I
can text them and tell them and say like, hey, this is what's up. This is the timing of everything.
Exactly.
This is what, Rachel and I are two people in the same home. So we have two people to gauge symptoms and feelings and stuff.
And I think that it's, and thankfully I do by appointment only now. So, during COVID, and that's been great because if I had symptoms or if they had symptoms, I would be able to contact every single person that came to the shop. And so that's really nice. But I think that's the most important thing. It's like, you go to a party and you don't know everybody at that party. That's a lot of people to contact. But if you're keeping track of every single person, at least you can contact those people and warn them ahead of time. And I think that's the most important thing, is to nip it in the bud, as you will.
Yeah, and the outing that we were at, we went to like a jazz club where they had musicians. We were like behind the band, so they were singing and like performing in front of us because we were on like the patio behind them.
Yeah.
But it's one of those, you're like drinking, so like nobody has their mask on at the table. But like moving to and from the table and the bathroom and stuff, you would mask up and
exactly
all that kind of thing. So I mean, you kind of do as best you can when you're not stationary and like eating and drinking. So I mean, it's kind of the best you can do.
Were you outside or inside?
Our seating area was technically outside.
Yeah.
So it was like a small patio, and there were like people behind us and stuff. So yeah, I mainly like. I don't know, this might sound selfish, but like I don't want it besides like the health part, but I don't want it because of I feel like I would be judged on the decisions I've been making up to this point if I were to get it, and then they're like, oh, well, he's been doing art shows and he's been eating out at restaurants every now and then, but he wears his mask, so it proves that like anybody can get it through any like thing. But it's like, I mean, anybody's just as susceptible as I would be, unless you're just holed up in your house, and I feel like
that's not realistic.
That's not healthy to just stay in your home and just not go anywhere for like 6 months.
Yeah. Like I said, I think that it's important to... Somebody recently told me, and I felt like this made sense. He was like, okay, if you're out in a grocery store doing whatever, you have to do that. But he was like, if somebody comes to my house, I'm not going to make them wear a mask all the time because I can contact them and tell them. It's a close contact, so that I can...
You can account for it. You can account for
it. If you go to a big party, you can't account for all those people. So, or if you were at a concert or whatever, you can't account for all those people. And even at a restaurant, but at least at a restaurant, you're with your immediate table. So, yeah, and especially, like you have to contact the restaurant and say, hey, talk to the server and stuff. I don't know. But
I feel like if anything that weekend, we would have been more susceptible at the wedding because there was probably 200 people at this wedding.
No shit.
And maybe 150, 200, something like that. And there was probably, I think our table, probably like 30 people that were wearing masks at the whole thing.
No kidding. Yeah, were you guys? I saw you guys had masks on.
Yeah, we came with masks on and stuff. It was all outdoor, but it was like under a tent and stuff. So the outdoor helped, but yeah, I mean I wore my mask up to the buffet and stuff. So most of the people that were patrons did not, but the people serving the food did. For sure did. But the people walking around like to the food did not. And I was like, if anything, I would be more likely to get it at the wedding than at
from
the
all
intimate
these people
5 people at the jazz bar,
Yeah, for sure. It's crazy. Our world is crazy right now.
Yeah. So we'll see how the week shakes out. Other than that, I'm planning for I'm doing a takeover on the Speedball Instagram account.
Oh, nice.
Later this week on Wednesday and Thursday. Cool. So I'm kind of like planning ahead for that.
Well, when I'm out there, I'm not going to any parties.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. Oh, I applied for a grant for the city and I got approved. That was kind of cool. What happened?
Cool. What's that? What was that? Is that grant based on like certain industries and stuff, like certain small businesses, or just
it was businesses in the city of Monroe, and I think that they probably geared it towards people doing business in the city, like not necessarily like somebody just living in Monroe, but. So yeah, the top was like $5,000 that you could get. I got $2,500. I thought I only got $2,000, but apparently the check came today, so I got $2,500, and that goes towards paying the rent and
Nice.
Any utilities. Obviously, with a grant, you have to write what it will go
It's
to,
very
and
specific.
you have to be,
okay.
you have to be able to prove that money went towards whatever, which should be easy because my rent's $1,800 and all of my utilities add up to $2,500, so that should be a piece of cake. But, but yeah, that's really helpful, and I feel like I have finally kind of like lifted out of the COVID. I have zero money and I'm walking around, and so with fall and stuff, I'm hoping that it kind of go towards, like, I'm hoping that it doesn't dip down again, which would be nice. I'd like to pay, took out a loan at the beginning of the year, so I'd like to pay that off, and or not the beginning of the year, but during COVID, and I'd like to pay that down.
Do you know how many people applied for it and how many got it for the grant?
I hear it's like public information, and I didn't really look it up, but I want to say I know somebody on the board, and I think that...
Or do you know anybody else that got it?
Yeah, one of my friends got one, which is good. She has a bar, and a few other places in town, I believe, got one. And so I'm glad I it's good for these small businesses. The first round, a bunch of people applied, and, like, I shouldn't say who it was, but anyway, like, big, like...
Bigger franchises or something like that.
Yeah, it's hard because franchises, are a different sort of beast, right? Because locally they are owned, but they're nationally a corporation, but they're a franchise. So, like, when I was growing up, I had a friend whose dad owned the A&W because it was a franchise. So it was clearly a locally owned business, but it was a nationally owned corporation, nationally owned, national name, So, right. I already said it. So they applied, but they'd also, I don't know if they got it or not, but
not selling enough Grand Slam breakfasts these days.
Yeah, I probably should take that out. Anyway, this company applied, but a lot of those companies got like PPP, and I think they looked at that, like whether they had gotten any other grants, and so some of the companies that had gotten other grants were not approved. There's a lot of companies that didn't get any grants, there's a gym that didn't get any grants, and I know they applied. I think they got money, and so that's good. But that's also a franchise too, and it's like they're in this really weird situation where they don't necessarily apply for PPP, or whatever. So it's just it's
kind of weird because they have bills just like anybody else,
right?
But
exactly.
The name is known, so it seems like you're giving it to a big corporation when you say we're giving it to XYZ on, Monroe branch or whatever.
Right. It's like locally it's owned by a local person, and obviously they do need help. But I think the determining factor must be that, obviously I wasn't on the board, but it must be, did they get any money from PPP? Did they get any money from other grants? And if they did, I don't think that they would be, they would probably be at the bottom of the list, and the people that didn't get any grants be towards the top. So yeah. I'm probably, so I'm going to take out that name. I have to remind myself. Anyway, let's, what are we doing? We're going to read questions today.
Let's read a review first.
Yes.
We're picking this one because I knew Becca would like it. All right. So this was a 5-star review from Gwoli. G. Wooly.
What? Gwoli.
Titled Conversations Between Friends. I've been listening to Wheel Talk almost from the beginning of their podcasting debut. At first, I was rather put off by their unpolished, seemingly unprofessional, casual conversation. However, as I continued listening, I began to realize that the podcast is exactly what they intended for it to be since its inception. Casual conversations between two friends about ceramics, pottery, and all things related to clay. Ryan is a website developer that creates balance in his life through playing with clay. Becca takes some time to warm up too. It takes a few conversations to realize that her sarcasm, obstinance, and gruff tone are just a facade, and that she is one of the most caring, kind, and considerate people that you would hope to meet. The kind of friend that would do pretty much anything to help someone she cared about. For example, if she were reading this right now, she would probably say, "Yeah, right, you definitely got me wrong. What a fool this guy is."
I love that. What a fool.
Don't believe her. Listen to Wheel Talk. It is fun, it is informative, and it is enjoyable. and after about 5 episodes, you will feel like one of the gang. Keep up with the good work, Ryan and Becca, and I look forward to our weekly conversations. David Guaglianon. Guaglianone of Guaglianone Ceramics.
I think it's Guaglianone. David, we said your name probably 5 times before we started.
We butchered your name.
Yeah, that was super nice. I messaged him a couple weeks ago and thanked him for that. Yeah, my gruff tone.
I actually had to look up obstinance. I wasn't sure what that meant until I looked it up.
What does it mean? Doesn't it mean like...
It was kind of like stubbornness, sort of.
I kind of think of it as like standoffish.
Yeah. Something like that.
Meh.
Stubborn, yeah.
Probably the quintessential what I sound like. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think he's being a little bit too nice, but like I just, but I would never call anybody a fool.
You fool.
You fool. This guy. That made me giggle.
All right. Shall we do a listener question? And then our actual topic for today is going to stem from a listener question.
Yeah.
So the first one is going to be, have you ever been declined or waitlisted from an art show that you have done for years? And what did you do? This came from @BS Pottery. Hope that's not bullshit pottery, but...
I don't think so. But if it is, kudos. Kudos.
Yeah. Have you ever been waitlisted for a show?
I haven't.
You did those like big shows back in the day, right?
Yeah, I did big shows back in the day, but I'm not a very good person to ask this question to because I'm just because
You haven't done a ton of in-person shows and like applied for a bunch of different ones.
Yeah, especially in the recent years. And the area that I live in, there are not a ton of potters. So
So you would have a better chance because there's just not that much of that medium to compete with.
I feel like. And I'm not even sure, it depends on, and I'm going to say this and I hope it doesn't come off wrong, but I have pretty quality ceramics and a lot of the potters in Seattle do like tons of amazing pottery in Seattle. But there's also, a variety of people that don't have great, like, setups and stuff. And I've always been okay with, like, taking pictures and stuff and presenting things. However, I haven't done any, like, super serious shows either. And this is talking about shows that you've been doing for a while and have gotten waitlisted.
Yeah.
If I got waitlisted from, like, let's say, for, like, Art in the Park, I would throw a fit.
If they were like, you've been around too long, we need some new blood, you'd be like, what the hell?
No, I probably would throw a fit internally, but then bite my tongue and accept it. But
like they got a new board or something that picked the artists or something, and then they just got a bunch of new people and they knew a potter and they got him in.
Yeah, I think
like
and I mean I definitely think that every artist should be reviewed every year for each show. It shouldn't just be an automatic in. But if you're doing the hard work to keep have new items, be current with your designs and stuff like that, then I definitely
applying for shows is like an art in and of itself. And applying for those shows like on Zapplication and whatever other shows where they have jurors, like, actually, maybe this would be a discussion point for a future episode, but maybe talking with someone that actually is a juror on something like that, like to like understand,
like
because you don't understand what goes into the jurying process, because like I don't know what other photos people are submitting with. I don't know what kind of booth setup photos they're submitting. Right. I don't know what kind of descriptions they're putting in there. I mean, I try to improve my photos every year, and like I don't know if lifestyle photos do well. I feel like those kind of shows you have to put like a gradient backdrop with pots in there, and that's kind of what I submit with generally. But yeah, I've been declined for shows, but not ones that I've done for years. The one that continues to keep getting declined for it or waitlisted for is one in Louisville, Cherokee Triangle. I'll mention it. And it's one that I don't know if it's like, it's probably like a little bit low of high end, like below average high end. Like the high end show in Louisville is like the St. James Art Fair, and there's like 300 or 400 booths, and it's probably like 4 different art shows put together in the same like area, and they all get juried separately, and it's a huge show for like 4 days or something. And then like I think Cherokee Triangle is kind of like right underneath that, and I look kind of every year to see like what other potters are in it.
Yeah.
That's a good gauge if you want to see, you know, how you would fit in the mix of the other people that are doing it. I would kind of save a list of the people that have sold there that year. Maybe you're not doing it, but you're thinking about doing it next year. Like, have a look at the website, jot down the list of the potters that are in there, and maybe look up their website, look up their Instagram, stuff like that, so you can kind of see what kind of work they're doing and where you fit into that mix.
Yeah. I think that...
But yeah, I mean, if you get declined, I mean, I just say move forward with it. They changed jurors a lot, so
I think that
you can't really bet that you're going to be in it just because you were in it in the past.
Yeah, I think that I would be... Okay, if approached with this situation, what I would probably be inclined to do would be maybe email the coordinator and be like, hey, I got waitlisted for this, and I am wondering if you could enlighten me to why, but in a way that is like, hey, I want to do better next year, you know? Be like, hey,
right.
I'd love to improve my application. Is there any pointers within my application that I could improve on? Like, is there anything that was the deciding factor? I don't think there's anything wrong with, like, asking that and maybe putting that out there, just because not only does that show that you are willing to improve, but it shows that you're genuinely, like, interested. And if they come back and say, like, well, screw you.
If it's a big show, like, they'll usually put it on the application, like, no feedback provided or something like that. Like, there are thousands of applicants,
right.
And if they get hundreds of people that are asking them why they didn't get in, they can't keep up with that.
Yeah, but then
they have a show to
run.
Also, so I mean,
and if that's the case,
don't expect a response, but if you do, be pleasantly surprised and kind of roll with it.
And if that's the case, and you do find, if that's the case, then do a self-evaluation too. Like, look at your application, go over it, give it to a spouse or give it to a friend or maybe another potter and be like, hey, can you look at this and see if there's anything that would pop up as a red flag or something that, you know, I could improve out. Like, I think that I would probably, I'd
love to see what kind of photos people are submitting and the ones that got in versus the ones that didn't. I mean, it could be like your booth setup.
Yeah.
It could be your photographs of your booth setup that just don't look as like up to par with what they're looking for.
Yeah, and you could even, you know, what I'm pretty weird like this, but I'm pretty open also. I think that if, let's say it was a big show and I saw the list of the people that did get accepted, and I would probably choose not somebody in my area of expertise, but I would maybe...
Your medium?
Yeah, my medium. Like, I would probably choose, like, somebody close but not close, you know, like a jeweler or something like that, and be like, hey, I did not get accepted and I saw that you got accepted. Or maybe send them an email and be like, I'm just curious, is there any way I could see your pictures just so that next time I apply, I could see kind of what they're looking for? Because then you're not saying, hey, I'm competing with you, because they're going to want certain, and be pretty clear about that. Like, I'm not trying to compete. I just maybe do some research on the person. Or if you know the person, just say, hey, I, would love to, if you're willing, see the photos that you submitted just so that I could work on my photos for next year.
And also jewelry is not a bad idea too, because in my area, the shows that I apply for that have jewelers, like, there are a lot of jewelry artists out
Yeah.
there. So they're applying for top spots that are very few. So if you get a jeweler that got in the show, you probably have a pretty good application there because they had to stand out. In the mix
exactly.
of,
And definitely do some research.
50 jewelers and they only took 10 or something like that,
Definitely do some research and make sure they're a nice person, though, because some people are... Those shows are, like, really cutthroat. A lot of those big shows are super cutthroat.
Man, I've got next to a couple jewelers, like, some of them have not been the nicest neighbors, but...
Yeah, and I mean, like, that's the thing, right? It's like this weird cutthroat situation that a lot of people aren't super nice and friendly. Not everybody is us. Not everybody's, like, willing to share every secret that we have. And you do have to approach that with some tact, I suppose.
Yeah. I do like some of the different applying options. Like the one show I do at Wyoming, the fee is really low to do it, and then they jury half of the mediums every other year. So, this 2020, if you were already in, if you were in for ceramics in 2019 and juried in, you would already be in for 2020 that you can apply, but you don't have to re-jury, so you don't have to pay like a jury fee to get in.
That's nice.
Which is good. So you kind of almost reserve a spot for 2 years at a time.
Yeah.
And then they have less jury process to go.
Yeah, that's nice.
Every year. And they change like what mediums they do every year. So
yeah.
That's kind of cool. I think that keeps a mix of different mediums, and it's probably like half of the work.
Yeah.
For the jurors.
I hope he answered that. It's such a weird. It's not like both of it. It's not really our main expertise.
Yeah. I feel like you can't take it too personal, but I mean, yeah.
No,
Becca gave you some good suggestions.
Take it personal, but I also do think that you need to be realistic about things. Like if you submitted something and you didn't get in, you can obviously do better on something.
And you should probably improve your application every year too. Don't submit the same photos the previous year that you did the previous year, expecting that because you got in the last year that you're going to get in this year. Yeah. Because it worked last time. Because they may see like, hey, I remember seeing this stuff last year.
Yeah.
And they're not seeing a growth and improvement. And
for Art in the Park, they jury it every single year, and no matter what, and you have to show growth because it is such a small show. You have to show growth of your products, and if you don't, then they take that into consideration. They don't want people
because it
out
just
there
keeps
every
pushing
year.
the show forward. Yeah. You don't want customers to come to that show that came the previous year and they see you making the exact same thing that you made last year, and they're just like, it just turns into the show with all the same people,
right?
And it's all the same every year.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, I think we answered that very thoroughly.
I hope so.
All right, what's the next one that's going to lead into the topic for today?
Okay, I will read it. Okay, this is from Mudslinging Pottery. Oh gosh, you changed the thing. Okay, don't touch the notes. How important do you think it is for a potter's work to be cohesive in design/style? This is something I struggle with personally. I feel like I am the least cohesive potter out there. I have certain looks and styles that are my own, but I get really bored doing the same thing over and over again and would love to hear your thoughts. Jody, I'm going to go I follow you on Instagram. I know that for sure, but I'm going to go look at your pots again.
Thanks, Jody. I recognize her name too. I think she did pot swap with us. Mudslinging. Jody Ray. Yeah, I remember Jody. Okay. So, I guess to start this off, I don't personally, I make a lot of different styles of work too. Even before I started doing the
Can
card
we also
stuff.
discuss that she's straight up lying? She totally is cohesive.
I think it's probably one of those where you think you have to use the same designs and like patterns maybe.
This is who I thought it was.
As you scroll through the feed, it looks cohesive with the colors and the clay and the like glaze treatment. Yeah.
I communicate with Jody on a fairly regular basis, and I didn't know that was your first name because I don't ever look at your profile, but I feel like you do a really good job at being cohesive, and I love your style. You're one of my favorite people to follow.
Unless she's not sharing certain things on there because she doesn't feel like they're cohesive.
Well, if that's the case, then just start doing the stuff that you have on your Instagram. That's great. No, okay, so...
No, I mean, like, maybe she's not sharing certain forms and styles she's doing because they don't go with her grid.
Right, and okay, so if that's the case, like, let's say, that's actually a really good place to start with, right? If you are not willing to share certain things that you're not doing, we're not saying that you're doing this, obviously. This was just what Ryan said. If, let's say you're just putting on Instagram what you feel like goes together, then maybe that's what you need to be making. And don't even waste your time with the stuff that you feel like doesn't go in. You know, like your profile looks fan-freaking-tastic. My profile looks like a shit show. Like, nothing is cohesive. Absolutely nothing. And so, if you want the example of something that's not cohesive, look at my Instagram profile. This is why I capped at like 3,000 followers for 3 years.
You also didn't post consistently. Consistency is important.
Not at all. But
Becca.
I know it is important, but yeah, like
besides the work, the frequency.
And I think that it comes with time. You know, like I always this is funny. Whenever I find somebody new that I like on Instagram, I literally always scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you can see.
Really?
Yeah, you can see the point at where their style becomes cohesive, like where they've found their moment. You know. Which, by the way, you won't find on mine. And yeah, like you can tell when they stop posting like personal photos and just start posting like, the business photos and stuff. I think that I'm losing my train of thought. What do you think?
I mean, I think for keeping it fresh and keeping yourself sane, you don't have to make the same. And also, I don't know what it means by cohesive design and style. Like, I feel like my stuff is tied together by the glazes I use, but I do so many different techniques within, everything's wheel thrown, so that like is the baseline for everything.
Right.
But then maybe I'll do, I'll add slip and I'll carve it. That's the newest stuff in the last like year. But before that, I was adding slip to pots every now and then and getting texture from that, or having a thicker piece and like carving it and like faceting it and stuff like that. So that added some different texture and stuff to it. But I mean, overall the glazes are what tie it together. So for you it might be, hey, you use the same clay and that's a baseline. Do you use the same clay for everything, or a couple clays that bring consistency? Are you using the same glazes, or do you have like 5,000 glazes?
Yeah.
I mean, Kurt Hammerly has the same mug style and forms, and those slip cast pieces are consistent, but he plays around with glazes, and that's kind of his style is, I guess, the uncertainty of the glazes and the range of options he has, but his forms are all the same, so that's consistent there. But he's also playing around with how he's treating it, whether he's putting underglaze on and then like a simple glaze and oxidation firing versus reduction firing. So like there's ways that you can have consistency without just saying I have to make this one thing and do this one design on these pieces consistently.
Pause. Everybody go over to Mudslinging Pottery and follow her right now, because we're using her as an example, and it would be unfair for us to use her and not tell you to follow her, because you should. And she only has 1,400. That was rude. She has 1,400 followers. She should have more because her pots are really cool, and she's really cute. She has a nice face. You have a nice face, Jody. But that was not a gay moment. That was just. I'm just saying.
Gosh.
I'm just saying. Anyway,
I like the pumpkins.
Yeah, I do too. And I actually remember your pumpkins from last year, and I really like the new ones. um, okay, yes, I feel like you pointed on an extremely good thing right then. So I think that cohesion, a lot of people think cohesion is an overall, like, you have to have this, like, glazes, shapes, and style has to fit together. I disagree. I think you need to pick one and go with that. So this is obviously just my personal opinion, not a professional. So like you said, okay, let's take a few examples, right? So Kurt Hammerly has the same shapes, consistent shapes. He has the same, like,
consistent shapes. They're
style,
slip cast,
but he goes nuts on the glazes, and that doesn't matter to anybody else because that shape is what's bringing people in, right? The glazes are actually bringing people in, but that shape is what makes him recognizable. So let's talk about East Fork Pottery. East Fork Pottery has a variety of glazes and a variety of shapes, but they have that identifiable
simplicity
rim.
And
the simplicity. They don't glaze their rims. And they are pretty consistent across the board of how they're glazing. You know, it's all one color. They're not adding an additional color to their glazes. It's all just one color, and their pieces go together well, right? So you could get it's same with Kurt, but a little bit different. You could get a pasta bowl, a cup, a plate, and a serving bowl, all in different colors, and they would match. Just like Fiesta Ware, right? Fiesta Ware has the same style, but a completely the whole Fiesta Ware has made its money on making so many different colors of the same style that you can mix and match, and that's really important. Then we have themes. So, like, themes are, like, you have a theme. You have, like, a rustic, kind of, like, not perfect, blues, greens, blacks, whites, tones, you know, and, like, even your yellows are kind of, like, muddied a little bit. So that's kind of what you're going for, right? And, like, God, that colander is magical. So that's, like, a theme. So, like, what, Pitch Pine Pottery, they have a theme.
Yeah, that's what I'm
very
looking at right now.
Santa Fe
with their,
inspired. I feel like it's Santa Fe inspired. You know,
they're like nature, and the sgraffito is consistent across, where they do that same technique across there.
Yeah. And who else has, like, a good theme? Oh, well, yeah, I mean, like, I'm trying to think. I feel like, you know, like, production potters, I feel like all, like, the classic production potter, you know, they all pretty much stay within the same theme, like Crocs, baking dishes, mugs, and they're always kind of like my style, where it's just, like, a drippy glaze, and it's, like, one base glaze and then a drippy glaze on top to make it look interesting, and that's it. But their throwing style is very similar, you know. Graves Co. Pottery, her theme is those ridges. My theme is those ridges, you know. We don't make anything that's smooth. I
feel like looking at, like, Alon Pottery, her thing is, like, mugs overall.
Yeah.
Is, like, the main draw, and then she kind of uses it as a canvas for the transfers, or the different color drippy glazes, or the carving. Like, the mug is pretty consistent across the board, and that's probably the majority of what she sells and makes.
Sorry. Hey, the Clay Center is calling me, so you take over for a second.
Okay. So, yeah, consistency. I mean, personally, I feel like sometimes I have too many things that I'm doing too, whether it's the, I kind of stopped doing some of the slip work in the last, I probably haven't made anything with slip. When I say slip, I mean like the drippy slip, where I actually, like, apply it to a thrown piece and then just get the, like, drip marks and all that stuff, and then either put a handle on it and glaze it, or, you know, throwing a plate and putting slip on it and doing a design. Like, I stopped doing that probably 9 months ago or so, just because I can't make them as quickly, and then the process is just more involved as I'm working on it. So, I have to get the right timing, and as I kind of added a new clay body in there with the speckled clay. So I would say that's kind of my next thing that I'm throwing in there to kind of expand my style and design. But for the most part, those forms in the new clay are the same types of mugs and planters and spoon rests and all that stuff. It's just a new clay underneath, and then I'm using a lot of the same glazes and finding the glazes that work well with it. But each style and design that I'm doing is another kind of audience that I can appeal to as well. I think the vibe that comes across with the speckled clay is, a little more earthy and different than, the white clay that I might have like really bright glazes and, draw the eye that way. The speckled clay and that kind of tones and all that might be a little more like earthy and kind of like warm. So, I'm still expanding like what I'm making, and it's not just saying, well, I only want to make, production stuff and that's it. Or I only want to make the carve stuff. I feel like I would go nuts if I just had to, if I was like, oh, well, I'm doing carve stuff now and people are buying some, so I need to just focus all in on that. Because I would go crazy if I had to just make that all the time.
Yeah. I'm back. Sorry.
You're back.
My credit card didn't run through correctly, but I think it was the bank. Did you also mention, I feel like also there's nothing wrong with having subsections of your line. Does that make sense? Like...
Yeah. Can you give an example?
Yes. You. You have like the carved section of your line, and then you have like the other, like you have your regular stuff.
Regular like production stuff, like a $28 mug.
Right. And then you have
got a glaze
the glassware, like with the glass dripping down. And then... Yep,
so the glaze is pretty consistent. I just have some that have the glass.
Like an added... It's like a bracket point almost. And then you have your carved section. So, and like I have the underglaze painted mugs, and then I have my regular line of stuff, And like for wholesale, I don't do that fancy ass glazing, I do just regular straight up like white, black, stuff like that. That's okay. And let's see who else. Like Isaac Shoe has his wholesale line, or not wholesale, like he has regular stuff, and then he also has his fancy carved stuff. That's like the brick stuff.
Right.
Who else does it well?
I feel like Forest Ceramico, they have their...
Yeah, that's a good one.
Their base tumblers that I think are one color on the outside. Is that right?
Yeah, they have basic ones that are pretty one color, and then they have basic ones that are like the swirly ones that are just like a basic... Not a base... obviously they're amazing cups, but their base design, and then they have the carved stuff that they do.
Right. So it's like least amount of time... more entry level for someone to buy. It's like $28 versus something that is a little more consistent, but it's not easily repeatable, or it's not repeatable as in you're not going to get the exact same thing to the next person.
Yeah.
But it's still like in that Galaxy series, so the technique is a little bit quicker. It's maybe 2 colors, and then it's consistent, and that might be like a $60 or $50 thing.
Yeah.
Tumbler, and then they have their like carved stuff,
right,
or their fancier marbled stuff that might be even more than that, to appeal to a higher price point.
Yeah, and I think that I'm gonna exclude like hardcore production potters from this. Oh, Rebecca does it too. She does her Sgraffito stuff, and then she does her regular production stuff. But most production potters, I feel like, stick to one thing. Production potters are a beast all in themselves. A production potter is a very specific person that has no issue with making the same thing over and over again. And not everybody is like that. And I think that needs to be said. Like, you have to be a special person to be able to make the same country, like, style crock for 40 years. But and keep with the same.
And they're just narrowing in on that.
Yeah.
Those details to like get it a little bit more efficient or a little bit more
right.
Yeah, I guess efficiency is the main thing, or like making sure you use a glaze that appeals but is also cost effective
right.
and like has good consistency so there's no glaze issues as you
like
fire it and stuff like that.
Like Bruning Pottery, who I learned from, has the same style now that they did 20 years ago, you know? It's like they found out what works and then they just keep on doing that, and they have no need emotionally to upgrade, you know? And so that's a special type of beast. But for, you know, mudslinging pottery, she was talking about how she gets kind of like sick of
bored doing the same thing over and over.
That's normal. Like that's a normal thing to
That's why I tend to bounce around between the different techniques I'm doing, because if I'm just making just the carved pieces, like I was saying, it takes forever, and then you got to wait for all those to get to the right stage to put the slip on, and then you carve them all, and then it's like, okay, now they're all done, and then you got to start it all over again. It's like and it would take a lot more physical pieces to fit into a kiln. Like if I was only doing those, my kiln would probably be way too big for what I need.
Yeah.
If I wanted to keep up with that process. So I've got to continue to make my everyday stuff that's a $28 mug that appeals to a wider audience that can pay that price. I think for me, the different techniques and stuff, besides the sanity of not making the same thing, it just gives you a range of different price points.
That too.
That I think works for me, because I can have it. They'll come up to my booth and say, how much is your mugs? And I'll be like, well, they base on size and technique, so it ranges from $24 to $48.
Yeah.
My average everyday mug is $28 to $30.
Yeah.
And that's like an easy answer for them.
I think, and I mean, like, I know for me, if I get bored of a shape, like doing the fun colored things, like that's why I feel, I could be wrong, but that I feel like that's why you see a lot of people that have those super specialty like subsections of pottery, you know, like because maybe we did get bored or, you know, maybe a tiny bit burned out, and then you figured something out new, like, you know, like
you like slow down and focus on one thing, and then you're like, well, if I had to make that all the time, I probably couldn't, you know, make a living at this with that price point, or it would be a lot harder to appeal.
It's like the quantity versus
it might be really hard
situation. Like I make all of my quantity stuff. I do wholesale, all these things, and it's a lower price point, but I can get it out the door. It's quick, and then maybe I might make only 20 mugs that have the fun designs on them this year, but that keeps me satisfied enough to continue to do the other ones. You know, it's like not everything you do has to take 3 hours to do.
Made to be sold.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Or, well, yeah, meant to be sold, but not everything you do has to take, like, let's say you do throw fast and do things pretty basic. That doesn't have to be everything, but you can sub off and sell something for a little bit more and take a little bit more time on that, and vice versa. If you are doing super intense, like super detailed stuff, like Ryan Reich, he's doing the shoe cups,
sneaker
cups, and they're amazing and they take a long time. And so if, let's say I was making the sneaker mugs or whatever, and I was like, man, this is taking forever. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I'm just going to throw like 20 cups that cost like less money and sell those. There's nothing wrong with doing like a subset and saying, hey, I'm doing this. It can still be cohesive. I think you just have to define your terms, you know? But also I would mention that, I don't know about you, but I've done a ton of research just scrolling through Instagram, looking at people's pages and seeing how they're cohesive to like better make my line kind of like something that I'm okay with, you know, selling cohesively. It's taken a lot of time too. I think that should be said too. It takes time to like find out what you like and what's selling and what goes together.
I think there's still some forms that I'm like figuring out, and I started doing more of the swirl stuff. So I've got some mugs with the swirls too, and I've got some bowls with the swirls, and that's just like very appealing to a lot of people. So it's like I offer some with the swirls that is consistent with my mugs and some of my other shapes that have the swirls in them. So,
Yeah.
and then there might be like bowls that have chattering that have their own look with the glaze, and that might appeal to somebody that wants more of a smooth surface. But yeah, it's kind of just figuring out what you want to make and what you like making and can bear to make over and over.
Yeah.
Or you could do stuff. I see more people doing stuff seasonally too, like making the pumpkins. Like that's kind of a fun little side project that you can do for 2 or 3 months and make a bunch of pumpkins for the fall.
A bunch of money. Oh my god.
And like ornaments and stuff like that. That are, like, I'm sure some people make those like Christmas trees, like a cone-shaped Christmas tree. And
so ornaments is where I falter, right? I found every year I try to make ornaments. And this year is going to be the first year that I'm like, screw you, ornaments, I'm not making it. Because...
Are you talking about flat ornaments?
Yeah, because those ornaments are literally not cohesive with my line at all. Not even because they just don't go with it, but because I don't enjoy making them. I like...
Have you done the ornaments with your design, your dot design and stuff? Like, could you do that on a flat surface?
I could, and maybe... Okay, fine. Maybe I'll
like
do
I
a
was
few
doing...
of those. But...
Last year I was doing the carved ones.
Yeah.
So they were kind of like, they're kind of like little test tiles for you.
Yeah, I could do that. Okay, that I might do. But I think it's important to like not go with what you think other people want and instead go with what you like making, because what you like making and what you are excited about is going to sell far better than something that you're like, like let's say I made Buttercrocks, but I hate making Buttercrocks. They might sell.
Or a hand warmer mug or something like that.
God. Anybody that makes hand warmer mugs has the most patience in the universe.
John Schmidt makes them. Somebody asked me for one at a show the other day, and I was like, sorry, I do not make them, and I don't plan to. And I gave her John Schmidt's name. I was like, there's this guy that's out of Minnesota that makes them.
Yeah.
He's on Instagram and stuff. You should look him up. He makes them. He was like actively making them and putting the restock up. So I hope she bought one from John. But
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, some of these forms that have patience to make them, I'm just like, that's all you.
Yeah, I've actually really struggled with the cohesion over the years, mostly because I like making so many different things, and I felt like for the longest time people needed a big variety of stuff. And this year, I've finally gotten to like the point of tiredness where I'm just like, you know what, screw it. I'm only making stuff that I like. And
is it that you wanted to make a bunch of different forms so that if they already owned one of your mugs, then they could see that you started making pour overs, so they want to buy one of your pour overs
right.
now, or you start making little pitchers or something, and they want that.
Yeah.
So that they just widen the Becca collection, but it's not all the same form. Versus like, hey, I bought your mug and I like using your mug, so I want to buy one for a friend that I'm going to gift.
Exactly. I think that, yeah, I definitely think that, especially with my style, it's very much, if you got it last year and you buy another one this year, it's going to be pretty similar to the one last year, you know? A lot of that had to do with Leavenworth, actually, that you have to like keep making new things. But
your glazes have changed some, right?
Yes.
I mean, you're doing some different glazing techniques, and they can get something different there.
And, you know, that progression has, like, happened over time. But, you know, I did one farmer's market this year. By the way, I never told you about that.
Yeah, you told me through text how it went, but...
I made $1,000 at the farmer's market in 5 hours.
Holy shit. And you probably paid, what, $10 for that booth? $25?
$30. I don't even know. Yeah, $30. And...
How long was the show?
Like 5 hours. And...
$200 an hour. How about that?
Yeah, but you know what I had at the farmer's market? I had tumblers, because I had those left over, wine glasses, mugs, big bowls. Oh, and little bowls, and that was it. And it was plenty. And we looked...
Bread and butter.
And
it's just like consistency, what you're good at making.
At the very end, I looked at my booth, and Val was there, and I was like, I don't know why I thought that it was important to sell like sponge holders and all these things and like all these small trinkety things or these small cups and all these things when this is all the stuff that sells anyway. Like, I think that next year when I do a booth, it's just going to be wine glasses, mugs, bowls, like bigger bowls, and garden stakes. And like, maybe a couple different varieties of mugs. But like, I think that that's enough for people.
Did you have a big variety of glaze colors there? So were people like narrowing down what glaze specifically they wanted? So
yeah, there's a ton of glaze
maybe
colors.
that drove some of the sales too, because they were like, ooh, I really like this color, but I don't see another one on the table. And that could drive them.
Well, also, it was the only farmer's market I did. So people were like, oh, I have to go there.
Did you get some like, are you going to be back next month or next week or whatever?
Yeah, and I was like, nope.
Yeah, I get that almost every single time I'm at the farmer's market. They're like, are you here every week? I don't know if that's like an out to say, oh, well, he'll be back. Or if it's like, oh, I haven't seen you here before. So usually I'll be like, no, I'm usually here once a month on the third week of the month for the artisan week. And, I'll be back on this date.
Yeah.
So
create urgency. Say, you know what? I don't know. I haven't decided if I'm going to be back next week or not. But yeah,
I do think the frequency helps drive some of those sales, though.
Yeah,
seeing you over multiple times.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're gonna cut it down when you do the farmers market again to very specific items.
Yeah,
and maybe add one more item.
Yeah, I feel like I'm finally, after 6 years, I'm finally almost to the peak of my consistency across my product line.
It's a hard balance, right? Because how many people. You go with like the umbrella of like how many people use mugs. Okay, it's this number of people. And then you're like, how many people use bowls? It widens a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then you're like, how many people use spoon rests? It widens pretty wide. And then you're like, how many people use garlic holders? And then it's like, beep, it like widens a little bit. And then how many people use sponge holders? It's like, a little bit more. So your umbrella gets bigger and bigger of people that it could cater to. But is that extra burp of people that it could cater to worth your time, and do you enjoy making it?
And is it hindering you? Is it hindering you? Like, are you making subpar quality products because you're making so many products? Or are you focusing...
Or if you spent more time making more mugs, could you refine your mug? And your mug's going to grow significantly because you're making more of them over and over and
exactly. Over. It's... those are like all things that you have to think about because... God, that's such a hard question. It's such an easy question, but also a hard question. It's like easy to look at, but hard to do. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I also...
Some of it's like, I do not want to make anything in two pieces. Like, I'll make something with a handle, but I'm not going to make like a jar.
Yeah, people are always like, will you make me a jar? No. And it's not because...
Like, I've made 5 or 6 jars maybe at Baker Hunt, I think, is demos. And those are the ones... I think my mom bought a couple and somebody else bought one. So... It's like few and far between. If you see a jar and you like it, buy it because
it ain't coming back.
Of mine, yeah. If you see a jar of mine and you like it, buy it because I don't like making them.
It's funny because like I don't make jars not because I can't. I can. I actually love making jars. I like the process of fitting the lids in. It is purely because my memory is so shitty that I will forget.
Like matching the lid with the body?
Yeah, matching the lid with the body, and I'll forget to trim it at the right time, and I'll forget all these things. Like,
yeah.
And I should make more jars. I really like making jars, but yeah.
And I'm totally fine with pieces not being exact to the one next to it.
Oh, yeah, me too.
If I can make a mug and it doesn't look exactly like the one I just made, I don't really care. I mean, I'm going to put the handle on, and the handle's going to look consistent to the one that is next to it. And the glaze is going to look similar to it. It's going to look cohesive overall, but I'm not worried that it doesn't look exactly the same.
When you started doing shows, did you write down a list of products that you wanted? And, like, because I
did listen to feedback from customers. Are you saying, like, if customers asked if I made this, did I make note of it?
No, because what's interesting is that, like, when I started doing pottery, I was like, okay, I need to have a line of pottery. Like, this question...
Are you talking about before you go to a show?
Yeah, before you even, like, go to the show or, like, start the season. Like, every year when I start a season, I write down a list of what items I would like in my collection, as you will. What items I want to have and whether they are quote unquote cohesive or not. And I've done that for years, and I never follow it. But but I think
Is it like I want to add in this item because I was thinking about it and I got questions about it and I started making a few and I like them enough that I want to offer 20 of them or something like that?
Yeah,
I think kind of how you arrive at.
Yeah, I think it's important, like, if we're at the very beginning stages of this, like, because we've talked about glazing and all those things, like, if we're at the very beginning stages, let's say that you are wanting to go to a show and you don't want your booth to look like total garbage and you don't want every single pot to be completely different, right? Because a lot of people do show, not that your booth may not look like garbage if your pots are total different, but what I'm saying is you want your booth to be as presentable as possible. And to you, presentability implies that your pieces are cohesive, right? So what I do at the beginning of show season is I say, these are the items that I would like to sell. I'd like to sell a 8-ounce mug, a 16-ounce mug, a 12-ounce wine glass, a 16-ounce tumbler, and larger bowls. That's a broad range, right? And then
Still kind of narrow, but
in garden state.
Well, to me it is, but yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Because I make like probably 12 or 15 different things.
Right. I mean, like, this is a short list. We're not being super realistic,
Yeah.
but, like, this is a short list, right? So I write down all those things, and that keeps me in check. So that, I think that also what we kind of skipped over was that a lot of people sit down and they don't plan out what they're going to make. And I think that a plan is super important. And over time, this just becomes inherent. But, like, when I make mugs, I weigh out all my clay and I make a batch of those mugs, right? So
all the same weight, all the same 20
size
at a time or whatever.
Yeah, and you're making 20 at a time. So that way I'm not weighing out my clay and I'm making a 12-ounce mug once and then a 16-ounce mug right after that and then 10-ounce mug right after that. I think it's important we should have talked about this at the very beginning. But which I apologize for, but it's important if you do want consistency. I feel like this is a base rule. You can agree to or disagree with me, but the base rule is that your pieces weigh the same. Like, you're not like there is a not that
all mugs have to be the same weight that you make, but that you have a batch of mugs that are a certain, like your 12-ounce mug always starts at 1.25 pounds or something like that.
Or relatively the same size. Like, I know Alon Pottery, like Leanne, doesn't weigh out her clay, but she's been doing this for like 20 years, and they're basically the same size, right? They're similar size. So the consistency that you want needs to start with the pieces that you want.
And I think that just goes to you getting them. You're building that muscle memory as you're throwing. That you always throw this pound ball on the wheel, and you always do the same. The starting the speed and all the steps that you do to throw the mug, and they become so consistent and kind of thoughtless that you can do it in your sleep almost.
Yeah. Well, and I think that when I started out, I wasn't doing it consistently. I was like, I would maybe start with the same size of clay, but I wouldn't make the same thing. Does that make sense? Like, I would make a tall mug.
Like, maybe you would, have like 1.5 pounds, and you would make 2 bowls, and you would make 2 big mugs.
Right. And what has helped me significantly is doing batches, like 20 at a time, or 30 at a time, or whatever. Like, for instance, Jody has these cute little incense burners, and it looks like she has 4 in this picture that she's got. And so, like, if I was gonna make those incense burners, I would make like 10 of those, and then I'd move on to the next thing. And I feel like that does create some sort of consistency. And with those, since they're such a specific shape, they could be however size, but they're all going to fit together within that group. Same with the pumpkins. They're all a different size and shape and, whatever, but they're pumpkins. Like, they're pumpkins.
Right.
So they fit in that group. But yeah, I mean, I think that that's important. Like, starting out with making a plan, you know? Planning's hard and planning sucks. And I feel like a lot of people are like, I don't want to plan that. You know, that sounds boring. But
that doesn't sound artsy.
But that's the thing. If you're going to want to make money at doing something like this, some things need to be compromised. And I do feel like that is a baseline of the you know, like having multiples of the same item. You know, when I go to a wholesaler and I sell them planters, they're not ordering one planter. They're ordering 6 or more of the same planter. And they can't, like, I dropped off some planters at my wholesalers a couple weeks ago, and I had one that was a specific glaze, and she's like, we'll take it. I don't think we're going to sell it. And lo and behold, 2 weeks later, hadn't been sold. You know why? Because it was the only planter in that color. And so there was nothing else that was, like, bringing people to that color, you know? So keep that in mind. If you have one-offs of everything, apart from vases, I feel, like those huge items, those kind of have to be one-offs. But if you have one-offs of, like, tiny stuff,
it's like a diamond in the rough, and you need a diamond in the rough shopper to find that thing.
And I mean, you
versus
can
something that's
like
going to be
connect
cohesive
them
enough to draw them into the booth.
Yeah, you could connect them with the glazes, but I'm not sure that's. I feel like I'm backtracking on a little bit of the stuff that I said earlier, and I apologize. This is all over the place, but yeah, I think that that's basically the base. Is that products? You need to have a certain amount of products too. You know.
Plus, as you make more, you know, when you get that feeling when you unload something out of the kiln early on, and you're like, oh man, I really love the way that turned out, and it just turned out perfect. If you make like 20 mugs, then the next time you do that glazing technique, you can glaze like 4 or 5 of those.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have 4 or 5 of those moments where you're like, those came out freaking
perfect,
awesome.
Yeah.
And then, you know, that's gonna appeal to a wider people when they can see for, you know, 2 or 3 of those in a set, or you know, they're related, so that you don't feel like, oh man, I sold that really amazing one at the show this weekend, so I got to make another really amazing one. So like, the more consistency you build, the more like amazing pieces you can make over time, because there's some glaze combos now that I know how to apply them, and I know how to get that good result that I'm looking for, and like what temperature it needs to fire to, and you know what steps I need to take to produce that end result. And I can do that more consistent now because of just the quantity that I've made over time.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you can just get that result without making a lot of it.
Yeah. I wish that I liked plants, because she has some planters on her website that are really cool. They're still for sale, guys.
What do you think about the clays and stuff?
Like different colored clays?
I mean, some people, yeah, like to maybe, you know, some people use different kinds of clays and they have a bunch of them, or I feel like the glazes can build some consistency.
I don't know. I'm not a mixer of clays.
One of them I was thinking was Swell Ceramics. Do you know Melanie's stuff?
I follow her.
So she has like multiple lines. I think she's a good one that has multiple lines, but she has some consistency with her glazes and the overall like theme. She would kind of fall in that theme category, I think.
Yeah.
Where it kind of gives off that beachy sea vibe, but also she's got some of the agate ware where she's got some of the marbling, and then she's got some of the more like painterly stuff where she's using the underglaze, like painting on designs. And then she's got more like carved stuff like sgraffito. Mm-hmm. So she's got different lines of work that she'll do, like the Southwestern design at this time, and kind of like branch off and do that for a short amount of time. And then she'll do, you know, a bunch of these seafoam piece is, and she kind of bounces around that way. I think it's to keep her sane as well as to just mix up what she's offering to
Right.
customers.
Yeah, I'm like scrolling down to see when she stopped just doing the beach stuff. Here it is. Like when she kind of like branched out of that.
Yeah. But her forms are pretty consistent
Are
with the
really
shape of the
consistent.
mugs, and
Yeah, narrow lip and wider base. Yeah.
yeah, so she's kind of got the form as kind of her consistency part, and then she'll add in the the agate ware, the different glaze combos, and then it looks like her clay is pretty consistent with when she's not using agate ware. I think she's got pretty much the same clay for everything else.
What's agate ware?
Agate ware is just the marbling. That's just another name for like the marbling of clay.
I see. Yeah.
It might technically be like the multicolored stuff too. That's like mason stain in with like porcelain. That might be considered agate ware too. Or agate ware may be just that versus just marbling clay.
Oh god, she's got the bioluminescent mugs are like the shit. That glaze looks like it's water under a black light floating up into the sand.
And then she was doing some like speckly stuff back in the day, it looks like. So I think some of that is just you're making so many pieces. If you make all the same thing all the time,
I mean, you'll get bored.
It's hard to just keep up with that. I mean, there's demand for it because it's sold in the past, but
yeah,
it can kind of make you like stagnant a little bit with
it's so hard.
Your creativity.
I so feel like your style it's like when I started working at Starbucks, like way back in the day in high school, they were telling me, I was like, why is this so difficult to get? Like I was in the first couple weeks and he's like, and my trainer, I specifically remember them telling me, there will be a moment like 5 months or 5 weeks down the road where it just literally one morning you're like, oh, this makes sense. like I got this, it's easy for me right now. And it just clicks. And I feel the same way about when your pieces and the way you're doing your ceramics, like there's this process that we have at the very beginning of pottery that you're trying out all the different shapes and all the different forms, and there's a moment that it clicks and it's like, this is it, this is my shape, this is my style. And it's hard to get to that point, but once you do get to that point, it kind of all aligns from there,
And there's also some time in there when you might be trying to replicate other
styles
designs that you see. Yeah, so there's still some people that you'll see on Instagram or whatever that you see their stuff and it reminds you of somebody else's stuff.
Yeah.
And you're like, they're probably influenced by them, or I don't know, maybe they don't even know them.
Yeah.
But it looks very similar, so it's...
Yeah, you just have to find your voice, Find your voice within the pottery. Find the pieces that when somebody asks you why a piece is the way it is, you have a story for it. You're like, oh, I really love this one potter, but then I started doing it, and then I was like, and then I tried this other rendition, and then I was like, this is it. This is it. Like I'm really inspired by this artist, and then once I started doing my own thing, it kind of evolved into this. It's like the wine glass that I sell. I'm really hyped about that because I got a glass cup and I really liked the thumbprint, and that's what that style came from. And that kind of like moved into this style.
Right.
And so I think that we've talked about it before. Anything that you have a story for is going to sell better than things that you don't. Mostly because you're hyped about them. You're excited about them.
Yeah. There's some pieces out there, though, that you'll see that look very close to another artist that you know. And then you're like, That just looks like the cheaper version of that.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't be a copycat. But
don't be like, oh, well, I know that there's a big demand for this person's stuff, so I'm going to make it look like theirs and find out how they do it, and I'm going to improve over time. And it's going to sell for cheaper, so like I'm a cheaper option.
Yeah, definitely. That's not what I'm saying.
I know that people will buy it because it's trendy or whatever.
Like, you have to find your own voice, and you have to be independent and be individual in your designs. But I definitely think that gaining inspiration from other people is not an issue. You just have to know the difference between inspiration and copying somebody, you know? Like swirls.
I do swirls. You do swirls. We all do swirls. Everybody does swirls.
But we all have our own different take on it and how we approach those swirls, you know? And when I started doing pottery, my swirls were super heavy. Super heavy. And that actually stemmed from a potter that I found in college that was called Off-Center Clay. And I used to have one of his mugs. I don't know if I still do.
What do you mean your swirls were heavy? Like your clay was too thick versus like doing the swirls on a thinner pot?
No. It means that they were like more defined. They like went in and out like a lot.
Oh, it wasn't subtle enough.
Like it was super like the mugs.
It was really overt and like you could like really deep channels.
Yeah, deep channels. Like, and that's because of the clay that I was using could hold up to that. When I was doing the Starbucks order, the mugs that I made were like short and super, super swirly. And they said, like, a few of the Starbucks people were like, these are the best French press mugs ever because the swirls were so deep that they caught all of the coffee grinds on the way out. Mm-hmm. And so, like, that's how I used to make my mugs. And that's changed significantly, you know. But over time, you know, just, I don't even know why, but probably my clay. Probably because I started using stupid porcelain. But yeah. Huh.
What about like how much you need to make something before you kind of find your stride at it versus
100 pieces.
Like keep making new things over and over, but you never like dig deep enough on certain forms.
Jeez. People
like maybe you have consistent glaze, but you keep adding new
forms.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to consistency. I guess you just got to keep making. I mean, you got to make something a lot to get better at it. You can't just keep making brand new things all the time and feel like you're gonna. The like gap between. I don't know, like. I'm trying to think of like the sliver of like improvement between your like 100th cup and your like 400th cup is probably. Or maybe I should be dragging that out further. Your 400th cup and your like 600th cup is probably so minuscule that like the improvement you have is so tiny, but
yeah, but the difference between your 10th cup and your 200th cup is insanely different.
Right.
Like I think that it takes at least 100 to like secure footing in that design. I remember the last time I did a mug club. Mug clubs are cursed for me, by the way. I figured that out. It's just mug club in my world is now just a curse word. And but the last time I did it, I remember texting Rebecca and being like, I hate this, and also my 100th one was so much better than my first one. Next time I do a mug club, I want to make sure that before I do it, I throw 100 mugs. Not even the same style, just 100 mugs beforehand so that I can get that consistency down.
Yeah. Okay. So you're like, they get them and then the first 20 or 30 like look significantly like,
oh God, yes.
This isn't as good as this one.
Yeah, so much different. And same proved with this last mug club that I just finished this week. Same thing. Thankfully, I messed up on 60 of them, so I was really good at throwing them by number 100.
Jeez. That's kind of like doing custom orders. It's like promising something that you haven't made is like, What's the likelihood that you're going to get good quality out of something you never made for something you're probably charging way too little for?
Right. Like, I always love the ones where you're like, well, I've never done this, but I like a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Did
right.
we answer the question?
Anything else? I don't know. How important do you think it is for potter's work to be cohesive in design and style? This is something I struggle with personally. I feel like I'm the least cohesive potter out there. I have certain looks and styles that are my own, but I get really bored doing the same thing over and over again. I would love to hear your thoughts. I think we did.
Well, I think that your style is pretty cohesive. But also,
I can see little bits in there where she's using different colors of clay and maybe a couple glazes that
yeah.
are different than her others, but if she makes enough pieces in those styles with those colors and that clay and stuff, then it kind of builds cohesiveness.
Yeah, I think that quantity is key. Unfortunately, for most people, quantity is key. I don't think that you'll have cohesive pots within the first 5,000 pots that you make. Total, not like we're talking like total.
Not 5,000 mugs you've made.
No,
just
I'm
5,000
talking
like overall.
total. Yeah. I think that, well, I guess obviously there are people. I also think that it has a lot to do with your personality too. Like there's some people that God, they just have that from the beginning. You know? Like I'm trying to think of
like this like central vision of what they want it to look like and stuff.
And I'm not that way at all. Like 150%. I'm also not like those are the same type of people that when they go to an art fair, their booth looks super cute. Like their first, like you go up to them and they're like, how many shows have you been doing? They're like, oh, this is my first show. And you're like, shut the front door. Like, get out of here. I've been trying to have a booth that looks nice for 5 years. And it's your first show and it looks cute as fuck. Like, I hate that. But I also really, I feel like they're really lucky and they're going to be successful because, like, I couldn't do that. I just don't have that within me. I don't have that design sense. I do, but, like, I also just don't care enough. But like, it is it has a lot to do with personality. Like, some people have to work way harder at being cohesive, and other people don't have to work that hard at all. They have a set vision in mind, and they go for it, and that's it. You know?
Yeah. I would say that's your like skill set versus personality, but I guess they tie together.
I don't know.
Your strengths and weaknesses versus your...
I've met a lot of people...
When I think of personality, I think of like outgoing and introvert and stuff versus like being attention... I guess personality is like attention to detail and...
Yeah.
Stuff like that too.
It's like I've met a lot of people that just have it. Like you can just tell it's just an innate. It's like natural for them to. I'm trying to think of people that are like that in my life.
And do you think that's part of like, okay, that's at a show that's going to draw people in, and then they're going to see the pots, and maybe the pots have some improving to do, but their design and their like marketability and the aesthetic and the attention to all those different details is going to give them a kind of a leg up as they refine their craft.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do think that for sure. I took pictures of pieces after I got off of the farmer's market, and I posted like a picture on my Instagram, and I was like, you know what? Screw taking pictures with white backgrounds because that's like the norm, and people always do that. And like, I think that I've been chasing for so long. I've been chasing this Instagram. What's that Pinterest like prototype? That's like everything has to, like your mug has to be in this cute ass kitchen and like with a bag.
Lifestyle photos?
Yeah, like lifestyle photos, or even on a white background. It has to look super clean, super nice. And I'm not that person at all. Like 155,000%, I am not a white background.
Yeah, if I could submit art show applications with my hand holding a mug in the kiln, like I would do that in a heartbeat.
Right. It's like I think that you have like I feel that once I started accepting the fact that I just hold my mugs out in the alley in front of 5 dumpsters, like I think that once I accepted the fact that that was my fate, that my pieces did start become a little bit more cohesive, because it was like I finally was okay with what I was doing. I think that a lot of people are chasing that Pinterest dream, and it's not who we are. Like, that is not who I am. I love rainbows, and I love bright colors, and I'm rough around the edges, and what was the word? Obstinance. I have obstinance.
Obstinate. Or
but like it's taken me like 5 years to realize that I should give into that. My best friend is really design conscious, and every time I'm like, Andrew, can I do something like this? And he's like, no, Becca, that looks like trash. And the minute that I wrote down my thank you card and like crossed out the word shit and wrote shoot like stuff over it, and the minute that I gave into the fact that all of my stuff just looks like garbage fire, like all of my design just looks like garbage, but that's my aesthetic, is when I started to become happy with how I was presenting myself. You know? And I'm like,
then you don't have to put this like false thing out there that you feel like you need to for people to accept it.
Right. It's like, yeah, I did show up at a farmer's market and I didn't bring tablecloths, and I had 2 shitty tables that had paint all over them, and guess what? I still sold $1,000 worth of stuff. Because my shit didn't look like I was trying. It looked like I was naturally in my element, you know? The crappy folding table with paint all over it is my element. Yes, and
also the others around you at the farmer's market selling probably didn't have, like you were talking about, they don't have tablecloths and they don't have
the vegetables.
All that.
All the artists did. I'm the only artist that showed up that looked like I walked out of the homeless land. But I bet you the lady next to me was so pissed. I hope she never found out that I did it really well. She had a great display. It was super cute. And it was like, took her forever to set up, and I just threw everything on the table and I was out of there in 10 minutes. And she's like, you're not going to cushion your stuff? And I was like, I'm driving a half a block. No. But anyway, yeah, but once I figured out that me just writing, like, it almost looks fancier, me writing those crappy handwritten notes, than me trying to look fancy.
Yeah, you're trying to be something you're not.
It's like Tim Ceramics. I love Tim Ceramics.
You're trying to, like, yeah. He's
got like the garbage dumpster fire look going on, and it's the best. We got in a fight about how many dumpsters were in our pictures once. Not a fight, but he was like, I counted 4 dumpsters and that's my area. But he's funny. But yeah, I think that you just have to find your flow, your thing, and go for it. And don't lie to yourself. Don't tell yourself that you're something that you're not. I feel like your style is very, like, you use a lot of wood in your display, and it's not like cutesy because you're a man, and which is good, and it's, you know, it's very, like, to the point and very, like, just, this is what I have.
Usually when Rachel was with me at shows, they would always think that she was the artist.
Yeah, I could see that. But yeah, I think that your display also has, like, grown over time. And it fits you. You know, it fits you. And that's why it works.
Yeah. And then I'm figuring out ways to improve the display besides the aesthetic for, like, easy packing it up.
Right.
So that it takes less of a footprint in the vehicle.
Yeah. Or
it can accommodate bottles and or bowls or mugs. You know, it can it can work for many different setups so that I can decide what I want to piece together at this show.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
No, I think we're good.
All right. Thanks, Jody, for the question. And we'll catch you next time.
I hope you laughed a little bit through this episode.
We sure did.
We love you. We love your stuff. Or I do.
I do too.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to our podcast. We really appreciate it, and we're having so much fun. If you want to follow us individually on Instagram, you totally can. Ryan's Instagram handle is @RDCeramics, and mine is 5 Lines Pottery. That's the number 5. We would love to hear from you, and don't forget to write us a review on our podcast. We read every single one of them, and we totally appreciate them. They help us out an awful lot, and they also put smiles on our faces. I hope you guys continue to listen, and we love you. Thanks. Bye.